This meeting is called to order. It's the August 17th meeting of the Town of Los Gatos Joint Parking Authority, Redevelopment Agency, Town Council, and everything else you can imagine. Before we start, I'd like to ask everyone here with a cell phone to either turn it to silent or vibrate, so we don't have that little dee-dee-dee-dee. Mrs. Rose, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Steve Rice.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Brzezinski.
Here.
Vice Mayor Diane McNutt.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mike Wasserman.
Here. Thank you very much. Do we have this on now? We do have this on now. Wonderful. All right, I'm going to use this for just a second because I'm going to pass it off to two lovely ladies in just a minute, but first I have a few words to say about them. Tonight we have with us Lena Iyer, Parks Commissioner. She's a student, and she has brought an extra surprise with her tonight, her sister Nikita. Again, joining us tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance is Lena Iyer, a current student member of the Parks Commission and former student member of the Community Services Commission. This soon-to-be high school senior is beginning her third year of service to the town of Los Gatos. During her terms on the commission, Lena voluntarily took on adult responsibilities by participating on a grant-writing subcommittee and developing on her own a website for the town featuring walking tours of town amenities. On an ongoing basis, Lena offers a youth perspective on issues facing the commissions on which she serves. Lena's commitment and talent are evidenced in her academic and extracurricular life as well, including academic honors and a role as editor-in-chief, work experience in restaurant management, marketing for Cisco, and she has artistic abilities, and she's just about to start her senior year. She will be sharing another talent with us tonight, though, and that is her opera and Broadway singing abilities as she sings the Star-Spangled Banner. Isn't it amazing how much talent and accomplishments are in just one teen? Well, maybe not. She is a Los Gatos teen after all. I invite you to join Lena's rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, followed by Lena leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Lena and Nikita, if you'll come forward and take this microphone from me. Thank you. We stand. Let's stand. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Lena and Nikita. Thank you. Sounded beautiful. Thank you. Lena, we have this gift for you too as well. Thank you. Thank you. Boy, are we in good hands or what? Wow. Turn that down. All right. Now I'd like to ask members of the Los Gatos Saratoga, I should bring this when I say this, Assistance League to join me at the podium. And they'll be singing our second song. Oh, no? No, did I make a mistake there? Okay. Tap dancing? That's a hard act to follow. Over here. I have to tell you, this group here, and this is just a small percentage of this group, may be one of the best kept secrets around. While many, many people have benefited from the League's generosity, I think there are many people who haven't heard about this incredible group. They obviously aren't one to toot their own horn, so we're happy to do it for them. I think you'll be amazed at how these volunteers have made a difference in so many people's lives, from children to seniors. In addition to the contributions you'll hear about when I read the commendation, I just learned that the League is holding a baby shower for underprivileged mothers and their newborns. This will be at the Terraces next Wednesday, August 26th. How's that for intergenerational connections? After the commendation, the League can tell us how we can donate gifts for this worthwhile event. And now, if I may, I'd like to read this commendation that's signed by the entire town council. Whereas the Assistance League of Los Gatos, Saratoga was formed September 2000 and is the 110th chapter of the National League. This league is a non-profit, philanthropic volunteer organization that identifies and addresses the needs within our community through caring and commitment to action. Whereas during the 2008-2009 fiscal year, the League completed 13,725 client contacts with children, families, and seniors in our local community, utilizing over 13,600 volunteer hours provided by its 119 members. Like I said, this is a very small representation of a very large, wonderful, and very effective organization. The League spent $45,000 on philanthropic programs, including Operation School Bell, Warm Hands, Giving Hearts, Senior Pals lunch programs, and senior craft programs. And whereas the League's Operation School Bell program succeeded in providing over 70 Los Gatos children with warm clothing for the cooler months, visiting over 30 classrooms to read quality literature on a monthly basis, volunteering in schools once a week to improve physical fitness skills through a target exercise and nutrition program, and issuing scholarships to 34 students to attend curriculum-required science camp with their classmates. And whereas the League's Senior Pals Lunch and Crafts program have served over 140 Los Gatos seniors at Live Oak Senior Nutrition and Service Center, where League members plan, shop for, and prepare a nutritious lunch 4 days a week and plan monthly craft projects for those seniors. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos does hereby commend and thank the Assistance League of the Los Gatos Saratoga for its tireless service and giving to the community and residents of Los Gatos over the past 9 years. Please, let's give a round of applause to the Assistance League. And give you an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Mayor Wasserman, council members, and people that are here. We accept this award with gratitude and thanks to the City of Los Gatos for this wonderful recognition. And our volunteers, 119, as he said, volunteer in the communities in the surrounding area with care and commitment, helping those in need. And we just are very, very honored to accept this award and continue to help people in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Round of applause, please. Just a quick little something. Prior to tonight, how many people here, show of hands, had heard of the Assistance League? Good. Okay. And just for the TV audience, that's about 2 out of 25. Okay. This organization of 119 people, predominantly women, correct? One lucky man and 118 women. Okay? This organization has done a whole lot of good for the last 9 years. There are children in our schools who cannot afford to dress properly, to eat properly. There are seniors in the same situation. Okay? These are not well-known facts about Los Gatos. And these representatives of the Assistance League of 119 people have been taking care and addressing those needs as best they can. And I encourage anyone out there to join, to inquire, to attend a meeting, whatever, the Assistance League. What is the website?
That's what I wanted to tell you. You did say that we're having a baby shower in a week. And if you would like to learn about that, you can go to www.algs.org, and that stands for Assistance League Los Gatos Saratoga. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure each of the council members would like to shake your hands. Thank you very much. And I also want to point out the Assistance League was one of the very first to join our Project Cornerstone outreach efforts. And that is now totaled over 16,000 adults. And the Assistance League was right there from the very beginning, so thank you again for that. Now we come to the council and town manager reports. And before we do that, I just want to remind anybody, if you want to speak to any item on tonight's agenda or anything at all, except perhaps the Giants, you can fill out one of these cards here and give it over to the clerks over here to my left. You know, I do need to do that. Thank you very much. As we allow those that were honored to depart, Mr. Korb, I'll look to you first for our closed session report.
Why, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. The council did meet in closed session today for a discussion concerning pending litigation, Ross Creek versus Town of Los Gatos. Council gave direction to council, legal counsel that is. No final reportable actions occurred. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Korb. Now I'll turn to council and town manager matters. I'll look to council for any matters you wish to bring up at this time. Seeing none, I'll turn to our town manager, Greg Larson. Mr. Larson?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, several quick items to report. First, Sandy Bailey has been appointed to acting assistant director of the Community Development Department. Second, the police department, in conjunction with the regional crackdown last week, was focusing on illegal cell phone and PDA users driving vehicles, and we did issue 80 citations and had one arrest as well for use of a controlled substance. So that was a very productive effort that was done regionally and hopefully educates the public about the serious dangers of texting or using cell phones while driving without a hands-free device. Third, we are launching our commission recruitment for board and commission vacancies that will be occurring at the end of this calendar year. The council may recall we had a great group of candidates, one of the strongest in a long time last year, and we're hoping to achieve equal community outpouring of interest and involvement in various boards and commissions this year. Next to last item is the police operations building. If you drive by it now, is visibly different than the old Verizon building that used to be there. Stucco has been applied. It's improved from street side visibility. The construction fencing is down, and the inside work is progressing as well, and we are still on budget and on schedule for a fall opening of the police operations building. Last, it's a time to celebrate and reflect that the town is celebrating its birthday on this past week on August 12th, and that's the day we recognize as our birthday. It's not the date that the state finally got around to recognizing us in November, but the town residents and the first council meeting occurred around August 12th, so that is the adopted birthday for the town of Los Gatos.
And August 12th of 1887? What?
Correct.
1887? 122. We look pretty darn good. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Larson. Now we're moving on to the consent portion of our calendar. We have 7 consent items. Council, any items that you would like to address or pull at this time? Seeing none, I have no cards either. So I'll look to council for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, there may be one
I have a card coming. I have a card coming. Mr. John Brady. And this is regarding agenda item number 2, which is the resolution granting an appeal of a planning commission decision. This is 20105 Foster Road. Mr. Brady, you have up to 3 minutes. Take it away.
Great, thank you. I am John Brady. I now live at 20103 Foster Road. We moved in last Thursday. You have my address now,
Congratulations.
Chief. And we're very delighted to be there. I'm not necessarily experienced to address council issues as I'm standing here to do right now, but nevertheless I feel compelled to speak before you and put this on for a matter of public record. I've reviewed the August 11 council resolution granting the appeal of a decision of the Planning Commission decision to deny the Singh application. Included in the resolution was a statement that new information was submitted to the council showing that less than 25% of the proposed structure would be visible. I have old information. This pertains to my personal observation shortly after the story poles were installed. I maintained that they were not installed in accordance with the town department policy. I also understand that staff independently requested proper story pole construction many months ago. It is my deep concern that you have relied on story poles that were not correctly or accurately installed, as they are not placed at the correct building pad location. They are not representative of the proposed roof line. The structure heights are not correctly displayed, and the urge webbing is not 2 feet wide. I understand that Mr. Singh has been requested by staff to reinstall the story poles. It is my opinion that once the story poles are accurately installed and subsequently verified, that the structure's visibility will be greater than 25%. Second, the resolution also instructed Mr. Singh to address neighborhood compatibility and privacy concerns raised by the immediate neighbors, that being us. Additionally, in the June 15 council meeting, every council member expressed concerns about neighborhood compatibility and privacy. In fact, it was requested time and time again for Mr. Singh to mitigate these issues to the fullest extent possible. Having briefly reviewed Mr. Singh's plans this morning at your department offices, I saw that he has reduced the total square footage of the structure by just 84 square feet, including just 48 square feet off the second floor. It's stunning to note that this second story west side office, which is giving us so much trauma, was moved just 2 feet from its original location. While it's obvious that this is not a material mitigation of our shared concerns, I feel that council wasn't thorough enough in their resolution in addressing this complete lack of mitigation or setting expectations of such mitigation. I also need to state that I'm not confident that any landscape solutions can or will address our privacy concerns. We have several other very seriously concerns of this plan, but I'll hold them for Mr. Singh and...
Thank you, Mr. Brady. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Brady? Nope, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I'd like to ask staff or perhaps Mr. Korb, what we have before us is based on the presumption of the new netting, based on the presumption of the screening per, I believe, the acceptance of the Director of Community Development. Can you shed anything else on this, Mr. Korb or Mr. Larson, as far as approving this before the new netting goes up? Or Community Development?
Well, a couple of things. First, the application does have to go to the back to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has to review the application and approve it. Council was fairly specific about not being specific about architectural or square footage or elevation changes to the structure. The direction that I took from the meeting, and I did listen to the tape a couple of times thereafter and reviewed it to ensure that I captured council's direction, was to leave those decisions to the discretion of the Planning Commission and staff. So it's possible that changes may not be adequate for the Planning Commission and or staff's review of the project. They have the discretion to say so. I hope that adequately answers your question.
That does answer.
Let me
because
also
what's-
just remind you, Mr. Mayor, that there may be other speakers who wish to address this, so before you close out the item, you want to make sure that any other member of the public who wants to address it has a chance to do so.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I think it's an important fact to bring up that this issue is a little different than others in the past, where this issue will be going back to the Planning Commission for their approval of a couple of different items that you raised, Mr. Brady. And Bill Chiocci. I assume this is subject to Foster Road, so also agenda item number 2.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm the applicant on behalf of the Sings.
Yes.
So I wanted to make sure, and my clock started?
Yes.
Okay.
Should be a
I wanted
little
to
clock
address-
to your right there.
Pardon?
Should be a little clock to your right there.
Okay. I wanted to address a number of things. Mr. Brady has not seen the full set of plans. We did not submit some landscaping, elevations, and photo sims. We have emailed him a couple of times and have not heard back yet, so this is good to see him here. I'm trying to establish a meeting with him to go through those in person. Mr. Singh and Mrs. Singh are willing to reduce the view easement that runs across his land. He is currently limited to 6 feet for screening purposes. Based on the photo simulations that were done by the architect, the landscape architect, Mr. Singh is willing to go upwards of 15 or 16 feet, whatever is necessary to completely obscure any visibility really between the two houses so that the Singhs can't see his backyard and he can't see any windows, and so they have complete privacy. The story poles, we did hire the contractor that the town recommended. We thought he did it right. The planner went up and looked at it a couple of times. I have a call into him now. He is supposed to be out there next week to resurrect it, if you will. I don't think it's completely down, but he admitted that some of the strings he has used deteriorate in sunlight in about 3 months, so we've got some orange netting wrapped, and we will get that corrected to town standards. With regard to, again, privacy, we looked at it. You actually brought up about that one room on the end. You did acknowledge in the last hearing that you're not a designer and you're not sure where they might be able to put it. Well, they spent a lot of time on it, and they really couldn't come up with something that would flow well with the rest of the house, the architect and otherwise. So in recognition of your pointing out this issue, he did downsize the room, and he made the windows smaller. And again, he's willing to relax the view easement across his property and do landscaping. In fact, the photo sims that we've prepared in color show 4 different planting materials, and the objective was to meet with the Brady's and to have him look at it and get his landscape designer involved, and however he wants it, and let him pick the material that in terms of planting material for improving and perfecting, if you will, the privacy between the two properties. So that's kind of an update.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Chiocci? No, I'll ask one. You did hear what was said before and what was based on our decision. The attorneys reviewed it a couple of times as well. I think it's very important to follow through on what you've said with Mr. Brady.
Yes,
And what you've said now is of public record.
that's correct.
As far as the viewing easement, as far as the height, as far
That's
as him
correct.
picking the materials.
That's
So
correct.
that's the way neighbors are supposed to react, behave, get together. It's also, you understand, your project's going back before the Planning Commission. So I strongly suggest that you have as many of these issues worked out ahead of time,
Yes, that's
you
the
know,
objective.
as far as that project, to the satisfaction of both parties.
Mr. and Mrs. Singh don't want to come back to a planning commission meeting without having some sort of resolution with the Brady's. That's
Okay.
their objective. And so they're willing to do, I think, significant, effort to improve and hopefully perfect the privacy to both.
Well, we've heard you say significant, and your neighbor's right there, so I encourage the two of you
Here
to
to
get
put
it
it on the
done.
record, and that is the case.
That's what we'd love to see.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right.
And, Mr. Mayor, let me just remind council that the issue du jour is whether to adopt the resolution in the form that it has been presented in, or whether to modify it.
Thank you. That ends public portion regarding the consent items. Council, I'll look to you for further discussion or a motion. Councilmember Rice.
I'll move to adopt consent items 1 through 7.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? No. All in favor of approving consent items 1 through 7, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously.
Yes, there is.
Whoop.
There's a no on number 2, a yes on all the rest of them.
No on number 2 by Councilmember Spector, and a yes on the rest. That works. And it's nice to see neighbors go out the door together talking. Hopefully that works out well. Verbal communications. I have a card from Citizen Ray. Come on up and let us hear what you have to say.
Say hey, Ray.
Say hey, Ray.
That's a new addition to my chant, okay? I borrowed it from Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid.
All right.
Say hey, Ray. A natural. First off, down to serious matters. I want to make sure that everybody that watches this show in this community understands what's going on down here, okay? As far as I'm concerned, there's an awful lot of code language, misrepresentation, et cetera, by certain members of the staff relative to what is going on. And what shines out above everything else that's happening down here is the fact the town of Los Gatos has an annual budget of $32 million. Guess what the city of Saratoga has for an annual budget? Half of that. $16 million. City of Saratoga is 30,000 people, just like Los Gatos. So, all the nonsense aside from certain of the staff, you can see quite clearly we've got a problem here. The new city manager has a problem, town manager. I say you should, due to the facts that I just quoted, you should change the name of Los Gatos to Bloatsville, USA. Bloatsville. Okay? And Mr. Town Manager, if you need help, I would recommend the city manager of Saratoga as a consultant. He'll help you figure out how to get down somewhere close to $16 million instead of $32 million, which grows annually, like Bloatsville. And don't think I'm going away with Bloatsville either until I see some real change. Well, incidentally, another brand new man came up, and a stranger to me this past week, and thanked me, grabbed me from the rear, and thanked me for everything I do. He said, I have a clear understanding with my wife that on Monday nights I get to watch Citizen Ray take on the process of evil.
Thank you, Ray. Your time is up. All right. That concludes verbal communications. And we will now move on to other business. And before we start with item number 8, I just want to point out to anybody in the audience here or on TV land, if you didn't see it a couple of weeks ago, Los Gatos was the proud recipient of 31 best ofs in the San Jose Mercury, including best downtown in the, I believe, Santa Clara County, probably in the whole world as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's move on to number 8. Number 8, we're going to get a staff report from Mr. Joel Paulson, Associate Planner in Community Development, and it's regarding our affordable housing strategy. Mr. Paulson, please take it away.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Just wanted to point out, first of all, there's a desk item. The council member had asked some questions and requested some clarification of some of the information in the affordable housing strategy that's before you tonight. Staff worked with the consultant, Seifel Consulting, to try to get answers to those questions, and hopefully those have been addressed. The town retained Seifel Consulting to develop an affordable housing strategy, and Seifel worked with town staff to assess the town's housing needs and obligations, existing housing programs, affordable housing inventory, and financial resources. The objectives of the affordable housing strategy are to spend the redevelopment agency and BMP and lieu fee funds, produce as many affordable units per dollar invested, meet the housing element goals and housing needs, and meet the redevelopment agency's housing goals and obligations. In the redevelopment agency's housing set-aside fund, there's $7.2 million at the time of writing of this. However, with action this evening, will be slightly less. It's anticipated that an additional $9 million will be infused into that fund by fiscal year 2013-2014. And for the BMP in lieu fee fund, there's currently approximately $1.4 million. The affordable housing strategy contains an overview of the housing needs, goals, and obligations. The overview contains a housing needs assessment, information on how the town can meet its housing element and redevelopment plan goals, and also meet its redevelopment agency affordable housing obligations. Currently, the town has a number of existing programs that create affordable housing and or help low-income or special needs households. Those programs are listed on the screen, which are the BMP program and the in lieu fees that are collected, the density bonus program, the assistance of affordable housing developments, housing conservation program, and then contributions to the Housing Trust of Santa Clara County. The affordable housing strategy includes recommended enhancements to the existing housing programs that the town already participates in, and additionally also offers some new proposed programs, 3 of which are listed on the screen. First being the notice of funding availability for multifamily housing, the potential for creation of a property acquisition fund, and potential to purchase affordability covenants in existing apartments, buying those down to affordable levels. The General Plan Committee reviewed this document on 2 occasions. First, they reviewed it on March 25th and provided some valuable input that was incorporated into the document. They reviewed the revised document on June 24th and had one slight modification that is currently has been incorporated into the document that is attached to the council report. Staff recommends that the council accept the report regarding the affordable housing strategy. And if the council accepts the affordable housing strategy, then staff will pursue the enhancements that are laid out in the affordable housing strategy, as well as the implementation of the proposed programs that were included in the affordable housing strategy. And obviously there's a great deal of information provided in the affordable housing strategy, but that concludes staff's report, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paulson. Very well done. Council, any questions of Mr. Paulson? Vice Mayor McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have several questions. Shall I group them all and
Absolutely.
run through them one by one?
Go, yep, because
And I'll get back to you in a few minutes.
That's all right.
Okay. So Mr. Paulson or Mr. Larson, I'm not sure who would be the best person to answer this. In the staff report, what we're approving tonight gives authorization to the staff to pursue the options. Could you tell me a little bit more about what that means in terms of staff time, or how aggressive, and where I'm going with this is, how much is this a report that's note and file because it has to be done, and how much is this really setting a framework for setting priorities where we need to really drill down and understand exactly what's being promised in each one of these options?
I would say that it would be the latter. It's setting the framework. Obviously, any of these programs, as we move forward with them, would probably need to be worked into the work program, and the town manager can probably address that a little bit further. But this is really setting a framework for some opportunities to try to create affordable housing opportunities in town.
The only comment I would add, Vice Mayor McNutt and members of the council, is This is a priority area for town staff as reflected in the past 2 years' audits, where we do need to move aggressively to spend the 20% housing funds to achieve their affordable housing targets. So they have been identified priorities for us. The Seifel report was initiated largely to assist and guide the staff in the ways to best achieve that. And what we're bringing forward to you tonight is 3 options that we have not recently used that we want to explore as new opportunities. Moving on any of these would require subsequent action and review, or I should say, subsequent review and action by the council, such as issuing a NOFA for, let's say, for example, 224 West Main, when we ultimately want to redevelop that site, creating the property acquisition fund, or pursuing the acquisition of affordability covenants in existing properties. Those will all come back to you before we spend dollars that way. But we think these are the best 3 new options to achieve our affordable housing goals and audit requirements.
Okay, I do have a couple of questions about a couple of these. And since you mentioned the property acquisition fund, let me start with that. How realistic is it for us to be thinking about doing property acquisition? The budget number was relatively small. Even though property values have dropped, it's very small compared to the high prices that are still in existence. So yeah, can't remember what page it's on right now, but I think it was less than $2 million was set aside in property acquisition, which would be like one house. So is that really a viable option for us?
You're correct. It's on page 18, the table that you're referring to, and it's actually less than 1.5. The reality is that would have to be explored further. These numbers were really laid out to kind of get an idea of, how many units could potentially be produced for that amount of funding. It also, even in the acquisition of properties that may end up being joining with a nonprofit housing developer or something where it's not doesn't require all of the cash coming from the town.
So that, just so I understand, so that money that's currently under property acquisition fund earmarked for that could actually be put over into one of the other options that you're exploring also?
That is possible.
Okay. On the affordability covenants, I believe that's only for rent. Is that only for rental units? And I got a little bit confused because then in Appendix B it referenced Baytree, which are condos for sale. So is it rentals or is it both purchase and rentals?
It potentially would be for both. Apartments may produce more units just from a monetary basis, but it may also, there may be some opportunities where we can buy down covenants on existing market rate units.
And just for my 2 cents right now, I think without a whole lot of in-depth analysis, I would be more looking at rental units because I think that's where we have the biggest need in terms of serving the very low. I don't think it's realistic that the very low income or low income are going to ever be able to purchase in Los Gatos at their income levels. On the secondary units, how does the proposed policy compare to what we already have in existence?
It actually is very similar to what we already have, and we're currently moving forward rapidly to work out agreements, what those agreements would look like with someone who wanted to enter into one of those zero interest loans, as well as crafting language for a deed restriction to allow that to happen. This is very similar to the existing program because we haven't fully implemented it. That's why it was placed in the new program category.
The existing program, I think, was put in place about 5 years ago. Have we had anybody take us up on that?
We have not, and to my knowledge, we haven't actually reallocated funds into a specific fund for that purpose yet either, which is another matter that would come back, obviously, before the council.
Okay. Then on Appendix A2, which is, a way to have quantifiable measurements of success, I was wondering how you count the number of units created for single parents. I don't understand how they look any different than regular units.
I think that these are really, and a lot of discussion took place at the General Plan Committee revolving around this and its placement. This is just a potential tracking tool. The information such as that would be gained through either census data and or as the house turned over. If it's an affordable unit, then the town actually, with the housing authority, monitors yearly how those units are occupied and to ensure that they're still meeting the affordability requirements.
Yeah, I think the wording on how that measurement's going to be done needs to be modified a little bit so that there's not an expectation you'll just be able to, have a blue door if that's a unit for a single parent. And then my last comment, you'll be happy to know, Mayor, is generally the concern I have with this kind of a report in pulling together these demographics is it doesn't give us a couple of pieces of information that I think are really important, and they're very hard to get to. And one would be the number of seniors who are in that very low and low income demographic because they're living on Social Security in a $3 million house that they've been in for 40 years. And so they're equity rich, income poor. And, I think I would like to know how many of the very low and low income numbers that we have represent that profile of that senior. And I may be off, it may not be that many, but I would guess that maybe it's quite a few within that, because that's a little bit different situation than some of the other very low and low income. And then the second thing that it's hard to get at, because they're not currently living in Los Gatos, I think we have a lot of people who work in Los Gatos who are very important part of our community workforce. People often think of teachers, for example, or people who work for the town, but I'm talking about the ones who run the gas station, the bank tellers, the retail clerks, the baristas, people we have to function, and they would probably fall in that very low and low income level. But because they're not currently living in town, we don't know how many of those that they are. And I would think, at least for me, that we would like to encourage the people who work in town and support our community and keep it running to have the ability to live here either as a renter or as an owner. So just two groups there that are very hard to get at just from demographic analysis, but are ones that I think are important to Los Gatos. I'm done now.
Thank you. I think council members fit in that group too.
Yes.
They do. All right, thank you. Councilmember Przinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
I'm only going to ask one question, Mr. Paulson, this occurred to me even though I'm on the General Plan Committee and even though we did all the review. I want to ask some clarification. This is on page 8 of the document. It's in the section titled Housing Set Aside Fund Expenditure. That's section 2 on page 8. And there has been conversation in recent past about the, for want of a better term, use it or lose it. And in that section, it says that we have excess surplus housing fund monies between $500,000 and $2 million. Now, I guess my question, maybe there'll be more than one question here. Mm-hmm. My initial question is, what really is that figure? Because we are under some obligation to expend that money within a certain time frame, and we've got this range of dollars that's relatively significant. Could you address that issue first?
Sure. Honestly, I'm not sure what the figure at the time of writing this was. I'm assuming it was closer to the $2 million. Okay. However, with conversations with staff, Stifel was aware of some potential projects that would probably come online. The use it or lose it date for that $2 million was June of 2010. So we were aware of some potential projects that were going to come online, which would significantly decrease that number, and so that's why the range was placed in there.
Okay, so the June 2010 That's the drop dead date on our expending surplus funds.
Correct, for this upcoming year. And then each subsequent year, we probably will go into same circumstance. However, as we pay it down, it will decrease that number far less than the $2 million.
And then the ending date, December 31, 2014, that really terminates this program, is that correct?
Correct, how it's currently written.
I want to refer to footnote 13 because it states in fairly draconian terms what happens if we don't expend. And a couple things I'd like clarified. And you find, I will read that footnote. If an agency fails to expend the excess surplus within 3 years from the time of the amount became an excess surplus, the agency is prohibited from expending monies derived from any source, including non-housing funds, until it has encumbered or expended for qualified affordable housing activities the excess surplus amount plus an additional amount equal to 50% of excess surplus amount. The additional amount must be from non-housing funds sources. Do we have kind of a layman's concept of how that would look? Because it sounds to me that if we run past our deadline, that the funds that we've got now are frozen in effect, and that we are forced to expend. We can't expend any other funds until we actually catch up, and then in that case, 50% of the excess must be from non-housing fund sources. This is actually the first time I focused on that particular item. Could you talk to it to give us some assurance of how we're going to deal with this issue if and when we have to address it?
I'll give it a shot. I'm not a California redevelopment law specialist. However, the town has been fortunate so far that we have not run into that issue, and we will do everything within our power with your guidance and direction to ensure that we don't get into that circumstance. But the way this is worded, obviously CIFL does a lot of work with redevelopment law, and they work with jurisdictions all over California. And so this, I imagine, was language pulled directly from California redevelopment law. The bottom line is we will work to ensure that we don't ever trigger that to find the repercussions.
I appreciate that, and I brought it to our attention because it certainly has a significant consequence that I haven't envisioned up to this point in time. We knew there was a deadline and we knew we had to expend funds, but I didn't really have any understanding of the consequences.
Thank you. Council? Just for myself, so the community understands these monies that we're talking about are passed through, given to the town with an express purpose of providing affordable housing. And I think it's great that we hired the CIFL consulting company to analyze this from an outside perspective, and they are certainly fluent in the laws that are applicable now. And what this shows that the town is going to be looking for opportunities to spend this money the way that it's intended to, and to increase affordable housing in Los Gatos. For myself, I share Vice Mayor McNutt's opinion about using this money toward rental properties, as owner-occupied properties in town are tough to come by for affordable housing program. I also want to encourage your department, Mr. Paulson, and all those involved in this pursuit of these projects, you've listed several in the report, to convert existing as compared to creating new, because we do have issues of density, we do have issues of traffic, and we do have issues of full enrollment in our high schools to deal with. So if we can take those monies and use them for the purposes they're intended for, and provide opportunities for people that qualify, I think it's a wonderful thing that Los Gatos is doing. Thank you for your report. All right, seeing no more council questions, I'll look to the community. Don't have any cards, so we'll close the public portion of that, and I'll look to council for an action, which would be accepting the report, or not, depending on how you feel. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Mr. Mayor, I move to accept the report as stated.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion made by Councilmember Brzezinski and seconded by Councilmember Spector. Any further discussion on item number 7? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you very much. Mr. Paulson, how's your hand?
Getting better, thank you.
Good, you're welcome. All right, we're now going to move on to agenda item 9, which has to deal with the CERT program. And we have a presentation here. Sergeant, yes he is. Sergeant Kerry Harris is here, wonderful. And Sergeant, while you speak, if you'll please pull the microphone from its holder so when you turn around, we still continue to catch the audio.
Will do.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Thank you for allowing me the time to talk to you about your Community Emergency Response Team Program, or CERT, and the Los Gatos Prepared Annual Emergency Preparedness Campaign. First, about CERT. Bill Mercer and I founded the CERT program for Los Gatos in 2003. We gathered a group of potential teachers, trained with a local CERT instructor, and conducted our first class later that year. Since then, the program has presented the 23-hour curriculum to over 300 people from the area in that time. Not all of those participants have remained in Los Gatos or Montecito, or were interested in being involved as an active CERT member. Our current participant database shows approximately 180 CERT members. In the early years of the program, we received grant money from the Department of Homeland Security to help offset costs, and we were able to provide the training free of charge to our participants. In recent years, DHS has provided support in the form of equipment and supplies, so we began charging a fee for the class. This year, we increased that fee to $30 for town residents and $50 for non-residents. The program's leadership team decided to increase the class size maximum so that we could hold the class just twice a year to further contain costs and still be able to serve the same number of participants per year. In many jurisdictions that have CERT programs, the extent of the program is the actual 16 to 23-hour FEMA CERT class. In 2004, the leadership team began developing a strategy of creating defined CERT neighborhood districts with the ultimate plan of establishing teams in every district, each with its own neighborhood incident command post, including a communications center and a response equipment store. The map you see has 21 CERT districts in Los Gatos and in Montecito, and 2 entirely in Montecito. We have CERT members in all of those districts, although only 4 districts have defined teams. The 3 districts have full-fledged incident command posts and 1 a partial facility. What has become very clear as we have developed these teams and neighborhood facilities was that for these teams to come to fruition, CERT volunteers in those neighborhoods had to be willing to take the lead and with the support of the overall program establish themselves as a unit. Individuals like Bill Mercer and Bert Fry in the Bellwood District, Norma Arachi in the Wedgwood District, Buzz Johnson in Rinconada, and most recently Cal Hoagland in the North Santa Cruz District have brought together dedicated CERTs to become viable teams. That opportunity to become a part of a team is available to every CERT member in town. I wish I could do more to make it happen in underrepresented neighborhoods. Sadly, I am stretched pretty thin as the police department's personnel and community services sergeant, training manager, explorer coordinator, emergency operations center representative, bicycle patrol team supervisor, and a principal in the police operations building project. Our CERT leadership team has a long list of projects that we would like to undertake, and I'm happy to discuss them if we had the personnel to take those projects on. Unfortunately, beyond that which we're doing, we don't have adequate staff. I'll talk a little bit about Los Gatos Prepared. Regarding Los Gatos Prepared, the CERT program is recruiting for members to staff the farmers markets on October 4th and 11th in the 5 main Los Gatos Prepared sites for the 20th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake on October 17th. This program has been an outstanding success entirely due to the dedicated work of volunteer CERT members who staff these emergency preparedness displays during the campaign and throughout the year at community events, block parties, HOA meetings, school meetings, church meetings, all around town. Beyond the cost of printing Los Gatos prepared handout, it's been an extremely inexpensive program and extremely successful. Finally, in closing, thank you for your support in making the services of CERT and Los Gatos Prepared available to the citizens of Los Gatos. You can be proud and be assured that it will undoubtedly save lives in our community one day. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Harris. And I'd like to ask all members of CERT that are here this evening to please stand. And I think your town council would like to give you a round of applause.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'd like to introduce these folks. This is Rich Maloney. He's the section chief of our training section. He comes from us from City of Campbell and has a long history working with Red Cross and emergency management. Norma Arachi is the team leader of our Wedgwood team and a real principal in the overall program. She is the backbone of our program. Thanks, Norma. Buzz Johnson has been with the program for about 3 years. He started the Rinconada team and has a neighborhood incident command post actually in his yard. And Bert Fry is been with the program since virtually the beginning and is hosting and leading the Bellwood team. So thank you very much to those folks.
Thank you, Sergeant Harris. Council, any questions of our sergeant? Seeing none, I'll look to the public for any questions. We don't have any cards, so we'll close the public portion of that and look to Council. Chief, did you want to make any comments?
I just wanted to amplify on Sergeant Harris's humility with regard to the level of preparation that town volunteers and town staff have been able to bring about through a multi-year effort with CERT. It really relies very, very heavily on volunteers, and the volunteers who are representing the audience today and are proudly wearing their shirts and do when they're present and representing the town at a town event. Sergeant Harris gets enormous credit for his own personal involvement and passion, much of it really at his own energy, and we know the program is as strong as it is because of his involvement, and it really is a not solely staff-led but largely grassroots program that compares very, very favorably with other programs in the region and even larger than that. So very proud of our effort. We know that there's always an interest to do more, and we will work strategically to make sure that as we move forward, we'll work to look for opportunities to link with established neighborhoods and to build upon the good base. But I do want to say that it is really tough to establish that initial foothold and find people who are willing to help maintain that group of people who are committed to a neighborhood and then keep them and sustain them over a long period of time. They've made a number of efforts, and some of those have fallen flat, unfortunately, as a committed person just can't sustain that effort. So irrespective of that challenge, we'll continue to work strategically to make the program even stronger.
Thank you. And Sergeant Harris, I think that excellence that the chief just referred to is also transferred down to your son.
Oh, thank you very much.
I think he's an excellent young man.
Thanks, you.
Really exceptional. All right, Council. Questions. We'll start with Vice Mayor McNutt.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. It's good to sit at your right-hand side here.
There you go.
I don't really have any questions. I have a couple of comments, and what I have said consistently the whole time I've been on council, and even before I was on council, that in my opinion, the number one responsibility of a municipality is to keep its citizens safe, and I think public safety is where we need to put our highest priority. And I consider citizen involvement programs like CERT and like Los Gatos Prepared as part of that, of keeping our community safe. And certainly the job that Sergeant Harris has done and our great volunteers is just been outstanding to date. What I'm seeing is volunteer fatigue. You started with over 300, you still have 180. Things happen, life's change, they move, they get jobs, things happen, and you can't stay with that same level of dedication. Certainly we're aware of budget constraints in the town, having many, many hats that you wear. So I'm wondering if it's time for us, given that, again, in my opinion, it is one of our highest priorities, to maybe take a fresh look at this program, create a, for want of a better term, a strategic business plan that kind of says, well, here's the paradigm that we've been operating under, but what is another way that we could go about doing this that requires fewer resources of paid staff, that maybe expands the volunteer base in a different way, offers the training in a different way, with the ultimate goal, though, of having more of our residents aware of the preparation they need to do and aware of the risks that we really have in Los Gatos that maybe other communities don't. I was just in Southern California last week, and one of the problems of being in public service with the city is now when you travel, you see potholes everywhere, you see risks everywhere, and certainly in Southern California, I'm looking at these houses on the edge of cliffs that look like they're ready to fall down even though it's not raining, and the traffic is so intense, and if you have to evacuate, how are people going to get out? And I come back here and there's a fire in the mountains, and I'm looking around once again at our hillside streets thinking, do we have good evacuation plans? We have fire dangers, we have earthquake dangers, we have flooding dangers, and hillside failure dangers. That again, if you're in a flatland community, typical suburbia, that maybe you don't have. I also was thinking about this 2 weeks before that at a League of Cities Peninsula meeting where they had a presentation on clergy and congregations. And in San Mateo County, was talking about how they use congregations as a way of doing disaster workshops, disaster preparedness, where the city issues certificate of disaster preparedness to each of the congregations, and they take the responsibility of organizing the training, of bringing people in, of having supplies on hand, and that's generally where people think in times of trouble where they want to go anyway, is to their place of faith, and they're already connected in with that community. So I think there are a lot of new and different ways to go about doing this, and I just feel like maybe we're at a turning point on this program, and it's something that needs to be a priority for us to look at over the coming year. And I think I'll stop there and see what other council members have to say.
Council members, no. Councilmember Przynski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sergeant Harris, I obviously want to commend you for all the work you've done to start the organization, to promote it, to enhance it over the course of these last, 6 years or so. And to the members who are present representing the entire group. You're very familiar. We've seen you out there in the street. Whenever there's an opportunity for you to spread the word to your fellow citizens, we know you're out there doing it. But I have similar concerns as expressed by Councilwoman McNutt. I think we need to maybe take a step back and say, how does CERT and perhaps DART as well, the police reserves, any of the volunteers who are assisting our department to provide resources that aren't available in emergencies that go beyond what we can handle on the street at any one time and any one shift. How does this whole emergency services umbrella of volunteerism, how is this going to work? I think that having been very involved with the DART program from its inception, spending a lot of time and day and night on streets for things such as the Lexington Fire and Loma Prieta, working in the command structure for DART, made me very aware in the course of time of how significant volunteerism is for emergency services. And I would think that perhaps every once in a while we need to just kind of take another look, put new eyes on where we are, and take all of our services and see what our resources can be, and really kind of determine what our significant issues will be for us. They're basically three, I think: earthquake, flood, and wildland fire. And for the most part, flood and wildland fire will be an evacuation event. earthquake is probably the one that's going to demand that we do all of the things that CERT has designed as part of its mission. But to me, in that, particularly recalling Loma Prieta, it comes right down to the individual household and how well prepared each household is to be self-sustaining for those 72 hours. And I'm not sure, and I don't think this is CERT's responsibility, frankly. I'm not sure we as a community have a sufficient grasp on how well prepared we are for sustenance in each of our families. And I would like to see us as moving that into one of the front burners. The other thing I'd hate to see us do is, because we have a difficult economic time right now, I would hate to see us price CERT out of the business. And I know in the report it talks about the increased fee structure for the training, and from an accounting perspective, it makes a lot of sense. From the perspective of when do we start to find ourselves in a kind of a unintended consequence outcome, wherein now people who are already dedicating 23 hours to training and then promising to be in the follow-up to continue their training and experience, how many people are going to be off-put by the increased fees? I think it would be a significant number. And in your report, you indicated that in the upcoming class, there are only a couple of sign-ups so far. As Councilwoman McNutt indicated at the very beginning, our primary job is public safety. If we get down to a point where we have to let go some services that we provide and request that the private sector come and take some of those services, the last thing we give up is public safety. And I think CERT is really significant for that. But I think it's one part of an entire package that needs to be explored by this council. And so my recommendation is we be very cautious about any changes we're going to make in terms of how we're presenting CERT, and perhaps look at the administration wherein we can find some cost-saving mechanisms, or maybe rely more on the volunteers to take leadership or management roles to get us past this short-term financial concern. Short-term, we hope. But the fact is that I would really hate to see us somehow find CERT becoming less than attractive for members of the community because of the impacts, not only on time, but now on expense to be a participant.
Thank you. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Last year during my term on the council, I had even greater opportunity than I am this year to become familiar with, to work with CERT, to be sensitive to and educated to its challenges and its successes. And just because of the way I think, I saw, and maybe this is akin to what Vice Mayor McNutt was saying, I saw that something needed to be done. I didn't know then, and I don't know now. But in my mind, I visualized a paradigm with all of the neighborhoods or areas in town, those sections that were already covered by CERT, and we have some of that information here, and then what still needed to be done, and that needs to be done, again, going back to what the Vice Mayor said, maybe needs to be defined or redefined. I agree with what has been said, that we need to keep going forward with this type of program. I believe that it needs to be reevaluated in what its goals are and how it's going to achieve those goals. That reevaluation has to take into consideration the reality of where we were, but more specifically where we are now. So I would like to weigh in and also say we need to go forward with something, but I believe that that something needs to be reevaluated, whether we have two council people working on a committee or somehow moving forward in a way that doesn't burden the staff and its time and therefore the town and its expenses.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
I'll try to avoid repeating a lot of what's already been said, other than, first of all, thank you, Sergeant Harris, for what you've done, and to the members of CERT here and in the audience. I very much appreciate what all of you have done. I agree with a lot of what has already been said. I go to the staff report where it says background. Council has requested an update on the town's 2 emergency preparedness programs, CERT and Los Gatos Prepared. And when the request was made, my first thought was kind of we'll get a report on what's working, what's not working, and where do we go from here. And maybe it goes to what the Vice Mayor was saying about a strategic business plan. You don't worry about downtown parking except when there is none, right? And we're not going to worry about what happens if there's another earthquake until there is one. And how do we prepare for that, and how do we get ready? And I remember very well the Lexington fire and the earthquake and the hundreds and hundreds of hours that volunteers put in. And it's not a matter of if we're going to have another incident. It's a matter of when. And how do you keep the interest up as we're in a downtime, so to speak? I like Councilmember Spector's idea of maybe a subcommittee to look at helping put together that strategic business plan. I'd be more than willing to serve on such a subcommittee. I thank you for what you've got here, but now I agree we need to see where do we go from here. And I'll let it go at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, Mr. Larson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to clarify one point. When we proposed the fee increases for the CERT class in the budget discussion last May, we stated that we'd report back to you after the first class to see what the impacts were. That first class starts in two and a half months, I believe.
October 31st.
Halloween. So it starts on Halloween. We'll obviously know within the month before then if the fee has had any impact on signups. We're not making that assessment yet, but if we do see an impact, then we'll come back to you as part of the mid-year budget review to review those fees for the next round of class in the spring. I really just wanted to add that point. We are looking at some outreach to neighborhoods. I think the outreach to communities of faith is a fascinating one, and I know Kerry, through his exemplar work, knows what other jurisdictions are doing, from Santa Clara to Cupertino and others, and we can try to learn from some of those best practices as they actually learn from Kerry as one of the stars in this, who fits this work in amongst everything else he does.
Thank you, and I'll tell you how I feel about this. CERT's important. I think Vice Mayor McNutt's comments about increasing the volunteerism is important. Campbell's not supporting their CERT program because of financial reasons. When I go through our budgets and the various things that we do, and I look at what we pay consultants, and I see tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and all this, to me, the $35 fee for residents, you should do like Little League. If that's a hardship for somebody, then the town pays it. You know, if you explain to them it's $35 for cost recovery, but from my perspective, as you're doing a neighborhood outreach, a congregation outreach, however, service club, whatever outreach you're doing, you say it's $35. If you hear any problem with that at all, I think the town should step forward with some money in the couch or somewhere, wherever it is, okay, and pick up that fee. That should not be a deterrent for anyone. That would be number one. Number two, I echo what's been said about we need to increase the volunteerism that runs CERT. We need to expand the number of people to as many as possible. I certainly want it to be as many community people as possible. That's my number one concern. Los Gatos, obviously. I've heard three people here mention the idea of what to me, and Mr. Korb, tell me if I don't cross any line here, but to me what sounds very, very much like the idea that a subcommittee would be something that might be acceptable to a majority of council members. We're looking at this item here, and we're charged with accepting the staff report. Mr. Korb, can we also bring up at this time the idea of forming a subcommittee to pursue the ideas that were brought up by Vice Mayor McNutt and everybody else?
Yes.
Thank you. So, Towards that end, I would like to suggest throughout as a motion that we form a subcommittee. As you know, we can't exceed a committee of more than 2. And a subcommittee to look at making CERT not only a viable concern in town, but to expand it, to look at best practices and to push the envelope a little bit and see what we can do to expand that program.
Second.
Motion made and second. We need to have some discussion here. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Well, I think it's, I'm going to support the motion. I think it's a great idea. But Councilman Rice already indicated he's interested. I'm definitely interested. I'd assume the Vice Mayor is interested since she brought the idea up. I don't know exactly what process we're going to go through to determine how we're going to appoint the ad hoc committee at this time. But I want you to know that there is a good deal of interest in this.
Okay, well, the mayor is taking note of the 3 that you just mentioned, and I'll look to Councilmember Spector if she wants to be included in those considered for appointment to this subcommittee.
Well, I thank you, but given the fact that we have 3 people here, you already have your work cut out for you.
Yes, I do.
So I won't make it any harder.
All right, well, this is what I suggest. We have a motion on the floor that's been made, a motion's been seconded to form an ad hoc committee. I hear from the 3, Vice Mayor, I assume what Councilmember Brzezinski said is correct? Okay, so I have 3 people that would like to serve on that committee of 2, so I will have to make that decision after this meeting. I'll do that at a future date. So I'll call for that question. All in favor of having an ad hoc subcommittee formed for the purposes of developing, increasing whatever the CERT program, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Okay, now I think, I don't think we need a motion to accept the staff report.
It's not mandatory. It's customary, though.
Okay, do I have a motion to accept the staff report?
moved.
Second.
Made, second. Discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
Boy, could we show Sacramento a thing or two, huh? God bless. All right. Let's move on to item number 10. Thank you, Sergeant Harris.
You can.
Oh, yes, item number 10. This is to introduce an ordinance amending the town code by repealing Chapter 23 about playing ball in the streets.
I'll give the report.
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Korb.
Several weeks ago, the police department approached me about the fact that Town Code Section 23.10.035 is antiquated. The prohibition is not enforceable, I think is what they were saying, and not practical. I agreed, and also agreed to bring forward an ordinance that would repeal that code section. That's what you have before you. I also want to add that I did ask my intern working with me this summer, Vanessa Orquiza, to assist me by drafting the ordinance. This is her first opportunity to make law by repealing law. She did a good job, and it's before you, and we ask you to consider introducing it tonight.
Thank you for that lengthy staff report. Any questions of Mr. Korb? Seeing none, we'll look to the public. Any questions? Seeing none. Council discussion. Councilmember Rice.
I'll move that we adopt the recommended action.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion? Councilman Brzezinski.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what if we encounter someone who's playing ball in the street?
It's legal now.
And, we're stuck, right? And it's like...
You just opened the door for me to say that in 1964 they hadn't developed developmental assets yet, and we thought that in that context it is pretty healthy to play ball on the street, so we thought it was appropriate to repeal this.
Plus they're wearing a Dodger cap.
I would also assume standard safety precautions must be taken, but if we're agreed, we will take safety precautions, and I can support.
We'll exercise appropriate discretion.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, with a suggestion to the motion maker and to the seconder that it would be appropriate to follow the recommended actions, because this is the introduction of an ordinance and there is some decorum that has to be followed.
We will do it according to the ABCs you've laid out for us. Thank you. Any further discussion? Council members?
This is the motion that we're not doing. This is the motion we're talking about now. Yes.
We've got a motion second, and we're discussing the motion.
I have to.
Here, let me make a suggestion, if I may.
Yes.
My suggestion is before you get to the motion, which was made, if you would first direct the clerk administrator to read the title of the ordinance, that would be a good idea.
Okay. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance of the Town of Los Gatos amending Article I of Chapter 23 of the Los Gatos Town Code by repealing Section 23.10.035, known as ballplaying in the streets.
And again, second, you do have the other motion pending. My recommendation is that you table that for a moment and that someone consider making a motion to waive the reading that does require a 4/5 vote.
So moved.
We have a motion to waive the reading. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion about waiving the reading? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes.
And what I understand that you have before you from Councilmember Rice is a motion to introduce the ordinance and instruct the clerk administrator to publish.
Correct.
That's correct. That's exactly what I meant.
Thank you. And we have a second to that, right, Councilmember Spector?
We do.
We do. Any
Then I'll
further-
have no more little felons on my street.
Any
No, you will.
No, I won't. They're not playing. They're
It's
playing.
not
ball.
illegal.
Infraction on
No
the
longer
town
illegal.
code. It's not a felony yet.
Right. Any further discussion on this issue?
No.
None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Take me out to the ballpark. Again, opposed? None. Thank you very much. That's it. Council, any other matters? None. Meeting adjourned.